you shouldn't do introductions like this, but Chris has told me, outside after me, there's enough alcohol for 150 people. So that's about 4 each, if not 5, if we're counting. So yeah, as Chris said, I've been at ServiceNow 7 years. Prior to that, I was a customer 3 times. So I think I was customer number 7 originally. And it's a very different product and different company today than it was back then. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of different things here. Some of this is some of the recap and highlights of knowledge and some of the announcements we made there as well. Because it is a smallish group, if you have a question, you have a thought, you're an idea, then other than ServiceNow people, please throw it out, ask the question, and we'll go from there. There will be a test after your 4 drinks on this slide. This just keeps me out of jail more than anything. Everything on here you will see is going to be released, is in the roadmap, and is part of where we're going with New York and Orlando, which are some of the things you'll see here. But yeah, as we go along, then please ask questions. So, what does the future of work look like? It's a big topic, right? And it's not a case of, we get a lot of questions, and I get a lot of questions around robots and automation and AI and machine learning. It actually plays out in a slightly different way in terms of they're more there to support and augment what we do. They can't necessarily replace what we do. There's only 5% of jobs in the industry that can be fully automated and replaced, right? And within that 5%, only about 60% of the tasks that person would normally do can actually be automated. So you say, well, if we do all those fun things, what does that person end up doing? Well, if you flip it and look at it a different way, what has stopped us getting there historically are things like rigid controls, right? How do you not necessarily work for them or with them or around them in some cases? But if you take examples like the financial services industry with things like Starling, Monzo, someone introduced me to Yolt this morning as another app. They're kind of rewriting those controls of what good looks like, but also pushing hard on regulators in terms of what those controls could be going forward and how the modern way of working, if you will, and the technology has to support that and be in service of that workforce. So you start looking at, say, well, we all talk about DevOps, agility, speed, velocity. Well, what's beyond that? Say we all go and do that tomorrow. What's next? We're not done. You're never done. So how do you go even further than that? And there are certain customers we have who have turned their organization upside down from the CEO level down, where it's a pool of resources as an organization, and they have skills, and they have talent, and they have resources. Then when they have demands come in or strategic goals, they align what they've got to that, and where they have a gap, they go and get contingent labor. So they start to swarm, they start to do things like squads, tribes, very focused things, but at the same time, you've got people looking at solving problems we probably have all seen at some point, sometime in our lives, but they look at it in a very different way. Many people talk about this sort of outside-in approach or a customer journey. You look at solving that problem in a very different way than what the traditional sort of view of the world would be. Then you look at things like training. Many of you may have got here today using your phone for some element of navigation or taxi or whatever it may be. You never went to training for the apps that are on your phone, right? And if you do have an app that you don't like or is a bit clunky, what do? You delete it, and you find the next best one, and you use that. Well, go to work, you can't do that, right? We force you to use these systems, apps, platforms, whatever, and then we put you through all these training classes that by the time you actually get used into the thing, or the twice of the year that you have to use it, you've completely forgotten. So how do you get away from that, and how do you sort of drive that interaction and that experience so that you can provide intelligence beyond that insight as well? So not only are you able to use it, you can use it intuitively, but the things that I'm seeing, the things that I'm experiencing, give me that intelligence, that context. In the consumer world, Netflix, right? Amazon, people like you also bought things like this. What if when I'm in a portal or I'm in a request system or I'm trying to find some knowledge, it knows me, it knows my role, it knows the things I do, it knows the types of things that people like me request as well. So why not make all that context come around? Because we've got all the data. Data's been there forever. We've been capturing it, but you'd never do anything with it. And then my favorite one, which any of the ITIL purists in the room won't be happy about, is that ticket spin cycle. We need an incident or a ticket for everything. Not necessarily, right? When you have automation and different things like that, how do you stop all that backwards and forwards? right, that we typically see in that blame culture of one team versus another, and it's not infrastructure, it's applications and vice versa, and the God forbidden SLAs and things. Well, how do you get out of that cycle so that it's the best process you can have is the one that you follow without knowing you're following it. And if you go beyond that sort of ticket cycle, if you will, and look at automation, it's just a fact. It's a point in time that something happened, and you've recorded it, and you've got context from it. But at the same time, you've learned from it. What did we do? Why did we do that? And the next time that question is asked, or raised, or even logged, how do we learn from that so we do something smart with it? And the inverse is true. How many times do we suggest something or try something and it doesn't work? The machine should learn that that isn't the right way to go. It isn't the answer. So it should impact the results. So the next time that question or problem's raised, don't give me that information that's not accurate. So it's self-learning and it's self-creation. You'll always have those tickets around, whatever they may be, cases or work orders. But the best process is the one you follow without figuring it out. Developers are a precedent example. They butt heads all the time with infrastructure teams. The dreaded change manager, right? You've got to raise this, you've got to raise that. Well, what if you could do it in a way that they follow the process without knowing, right? Using Slack or whatever their collaboration tools are, that happens automatically in the background, but it's automated in a way that it stages it along the way. So we've got a big customer not far down the river here, who traditionally for an application release, because of lots of different issues and rigid controls, had on average 240 approvers per request to release an application. Think how long that took, and typically 239 would be the one that rejects. And you go back around the horn again, right? It'd be an absolute disaster. They went back and said, well, actually, what is the role of an approver? And if we define that and make you accountable that when you push this button, this is what it means, they're now down to an average of 6 approvers per request. Because suddenly, they've automated it and made it contextual, but made it accountable. It changes the way things happen. So now they release on a weekly basis rather than a quarterly basis, which is huge, right, in this sort of time and age. So if you add all those things up and look at them sort of collectively, what could you do? Well, you start looking at that beyond the consumer experience. It used to be that enterprise was the grade, right? That was the standard of infrastructure, scale, speed, resilience, reliability. Not anymore. It's actually quite fragile. And if you look on, if you're boarding us, look on the Bank of England's website or the FCA, all the banks now have to report their outages, right, and service interruptions. So you can see on an hourly basis things that aren't working, things that are degraded, or things that are broken. So now you look at the consumer experience on your phone and app shoes, they're always on. They're never not on, right? Unless this is my slide gig to Salesforce. Last week they had a 14-hour outage because of a poor release. But it's generally always there, right? If you look at your LinkedIn's, your Twitter's, if you're old, you might use Facebook, your Instagrams, those sort of things. They're always there. They're always available. That's the standard we expect now. And if we have a bad experience, we generally remove that app and we go and use another one. So you've got to go beyond what is the consumer experience. How do you bring that into the enterprise? Always makes me laugh. When you're coming downstairs, you sign that little piece of paper, that visitor thing, they tear it off, and they give it to you. Where's that ever go? Mine's right there. But if the fire alarm went off now, would they know who was in the building, who's still in the building, who actually did sign out? Well, what if you could digitalize that process and make it more of a push and on-demand situation? That would be a lot easier, it would be a lot simpler, and it would, again, that consumer-like experience. So you say, we talk a lot about the future of work is now and digital workflows and those sort of things, but it's actually beyond that. It still feels quite detached. I did a media interview yesterday where they were still talking about silos and IT, and it felt like we were still sort of on the outside looking in at IT, that we're waiting for the IT department or somebody. We almost talk about them in the third person. It's actually the opposite. The future works you. You're going to shape the demand, you're going to shape the future, and the way your experiences happen, and the way you work, and your home life, and what you do, maybe when you're on the train and things, that's how the enterprise is going to shape going forwards. And we're trying to make massive moves to say, how do we bring the work to you, in context of you, and the scenario you're in, and personalized to you, not because are there any enterprise architects in the room? If you don't be the one, right? Generally what we find is people in IT design a system for their end users. And it looks like a bag of bolts. And if you know how to navigate around it, it'll be wonderful. But to your end user that just wants something, it's a really poor experience. But we do that because we want to report a certain way or capture certain information that's relevant to the end user to get in the service they need. If you were to look at your phone or your inbox and use that color coding technique and had 4 colors, help, change, request, and knowledge, pick 4 colors, I bet you 80-85% of what you do in your inbox falls into those buckets. And that's unstructured work. Why is it there? Because it's easy. Well, I can quickly send an email and ask you for something or request something. That's simple and easy, and I get a pretty instant response, and it's very sort of fulfilling, if you will. As soon as you traditionally put that into a system or workflow, it becomes difficult, it becomes cumbersome. So how do you automate that and make that a much better experience? You've got to do it in context of, or the persona of that end user. Now, as a company, when I was a customer, it was very much about ITSM. The platform was there, but no one really knew what a platform was or what it could do 14 years ago. And certainly in the cloud, right? Back in 2005-ish, who was even looking at AWS and automation of, different things that were going on? Not many people. So you say, we looked at it and said, ITSM's been brilliant for us and will continue to be brilliant for us. But what else can we do? Where are customers taking us? And they were taking us into HR. They were taking us into the front office, into customer service. Because a lot of the principles and foundations of what we do in IT around the delivery and management of service are really good. But no one ever wrote those books, those methodologies, those whatevers for the other parts of the business, which is why it's often been fractious. And when you end up customizing or trying to wedge a technology tool into HR or somewhere else, it generally fails. It doesn't go well. Now, what's happened in the Workdays of the world and the Salesforces have spun up, which is great, but they're still point solutions. Until you join all the dots together and sort of make that journey connected, there will always be point solutions. So about 18 months ago, we went out to about 300 employees, about 400 or 500 customers, and we interviewed them all over the world. Said, what is it we do? Right? What should we be doing? What's our purpose? Not, create more tickets. What is it we can actually do? And we came up with this tagline of, we make the world of work better for people, so that you have a good experience. You can get what you need when you need, but on your terms, and it comes to you, whether that's through the web, through a mobile app, or even notification or collaboration driven. So he said, well, great, but what does that mean? Well, it means I have a great experience. And if you look at the way experiences are constructed, typically, it's the pyramid idea. Above the line, it's nice, it's simple, it's easy. What's below the line? The complexity. It's hidden, right? The Ubers, the whatevers of the world, all the complexity behind the scenes is gone. You don't even know it's there. Uber is a workflow forms-based application. It just doesn't feel that way. You don't experience it that way because it's hidden. All the complexity is hidden. Field A, if you were to design it, is where are you? Field B, where do you want to go? Field C is who's going to get you there, and Field C is how you're going to pay. That's it. Think if we had designed that in IT, it wouldn't look anything like it does today, I guarantee it. We'd have users, power users, super users, what side of the car do you want to sit on, what color car do you want, and all this other stuff, and it would just be horrible, right? And there'd be people lost all over the world. Now, work today, historically, is complex, right? We seem to thrive on the complexity, if you will, of things, and the more sort of cylinders and arrows of the things we can join together on a diagram, we almost seem to claim victory, that it's a great project and it's fulfilling for IT, but what about the end user? The hoops and the jumps we make them go through to use that system, are we actually satisfying them and giving them what they want? Now, the problem is, over time, they start to vote with their feet. And that's how shadow IT came about, when you think about it, right? Salesforce has been wildly successful. Because they went, you know what, IT guys, you can't give the end users what they need, so we're going to do it directly with them, and we're going to go around you, because that's where the money is, that's where the power is, and that's why they've been wildly successful, and well done them. Workday has started to do the same with the CHROs of the world, and their users, right? People in HR are a different breed or a different experience to what we are used to in IT. You'd never put an incident in front of them, right? Or ask them what a CI is. They wouldn't have a clue, and nor should they. So how do you bring those experiences together? And more importantly, where the IT piece has to happen, the HR piece has to happen, customer service for your real customers, how do you join the dots and give them that experience? And that's where the platform finally is sort of unleashing its power, if you will. I think, did anyone in here go to Knowledge? No, one, other than employees and partners. For me, I've been to every single Knowledge, right? The first one I ever went to was 38 people, and Fred hand wrote the badge and stuck it on you, like as a badge of honor. This year there were 21,174 people at Knowledge, right? So it's bonkers how big that thing is. And I think this year, for the first time, the penny dropped on the platform in terms of what it is, what it can do, and how it joins all the dots. And if you look at that simple front-end user type experience that you're used to on your phone, and then the complexity behind the scenes sort of being engineered away for you for workflow or productivity type applications, that's exactly what we do. That's our sweet spot. We're not getting any more time in the day. We're not necessarily getting any more headcount or budget. So how do you do more with what you've got, but do it in a fully automated way, but a way that feels good, right? That I have a good experience. And afterwards, when we're having the drinks and things, I'll show you the app my team use. So I have 7 people all over the world now that are titled evangelists, which is kind of odd working for the Pope, but it kind of fits, right? It's a good joke. We use an app to track our work. My guys and girls are all over the place all the time, and I don't necessarily where they always are, but they check in. They say, hey, I'm with this customer in Mumbai, or I'm with this customer in Melbourne, and this is what we talked about, this is who they are, and this is who we met with. And I can see very simply on a map where all my people are, who they're meeting with. It's got 6 fields. It's my CRM for my team, right? But we know who we're meeting with, what we're meeting about, driving our demand, if you will, and I know how much contractual value that my team are touching or influencing for our company. So that values my team massively, right? And it's mobile, and it was built in 2 weeks on Madrid, right? So this is what it's all about, is powering these workflows on the platform. Now at Knowledge, we made in total 37 product announcements through the different keynotes that went through, and obviously our release cycle is a big part of that. Madrid came out actually on March the 6th this year, and was the first time we released what was the SkyGiraffe acquisition, the replatforming of the mobile studio and the mobile platform. We're heavily on our way to New York. We've got a couple of sprints left, I believe, and we just got the New York release roadmap yesterday that any of you that are customers are entitled to see. So if you want a deeper dive on New York, it takes about an hour. Please ask your account team, because we can show you that, and with all the screenshots and all those other good things. Orlando will be Q1 next year, I should say. And Knowledge is in Orlando next year as well in May. And then towards the end of 2020 will be Paris as well. There's a group of people, there's about 20, 25 of us globally, that can present that roadmap as well and give you line of sight into where we're going to be 18 months from now as part of it. So in terms of what we talked about at Knowledge, making it easy to build things. I think historically with the platform and the way some of things worked, it could be difficult. You needed not a pro coder, but you had to know what you were doing around the system. And you could at times get yourself into gnarly situations. So what we wanted to do, and we've had the app builder for a while, but we wanted to make that even easier. So even a simple thing like a spreadsheet, where you've got columns and rows and all those fun things, you can now import that straight in through this, and it will create the app with the forms and all the right fields and all the things that are in your spreadsheet, and bring the data in as well for you. It takes about a minute to do it. At the same time, it will set up permissions, the type of roles that you want, right? The type of forms. And from here, once the shell is essentially created, you know, you've got a catalog, you've got a knowledge base. These are all options that you can add. So the guided app creator really lowers the bar from a no-code, low-code standpoint to making those workflow/productivity type applications, right? Of course, you can obviously go much further than that for the sysadmins and the developers in the room, but a way to get those quick, easy, like the visitor check-in downstairs, right? That piece of paper, that could probably be built in 10 minutes using this thing, when you think about it. Of course, you'd want to style it and make it look pretty and all those things with Service Portal, or make it available on the phone, but the shell of what you need to be doing could be done very, very quickly. So this is available in the New York release, and it's about that quick time to value to deliver an app on the platform. And remember, the fundamental thing that we do is forms-based workflow. At the core of the system, despite all the marketing material we have, 3 words describe ServiceNow: forms-based workflow. Everything extends and wraps around that, from analytics to machine learning to mobile. They all respond, react, and interact with a form that's got some data in it that follows a workflow. You can automate the hell out of it, or it can still be manual with approval processes and things, and that's fine, but it's really about that whole thing coming together as a platform. Now, within the platform, you start saying, well, we've still got these silos, right? You still might have a Workday, you still might have a Salesforce. Typically, we see 4 to 6 key platforms in a customer. SAP is another big one. And you say, well, as an experience, if you think about onboarding, offboarding, sadly, or something that involves procurement or a billing cycle, how do you join all the dots, right? As an experience, if you think about a supply chain, right, it's probably the most complex thing in the world. Think about Amazon's supply chain. It's mad, it's massive, but you have no idea it's even there. You find anything you want, you push the button, and magically the man or the woman appears 2 days later on your doorstep, and you have a box of stuff. But you look at that supply chain, it's huge. So it's about hiding that complexity. So part of what we've tried to do is with the integration hub and make it easy integrations to things. We know now that, more so than ever, we're not the only player. We're one of those 4, 5, 6 platforms. But how can I make this thing talk to other things simply and easily, but in context? Many of you could probably create an integration. It's not that difficult to do. But what's the context of it? What's the data-driven aspects of it? When should it happen? What should it happen? I think this is clicking through Microsoft Dynamics in terms of opportunities and looking at how that CRM works with cases and different things like that. So we'll continue to add more and more integrations out of the box, and we release them through the store. Right? So on a monthly basis, we have a schedule of all the new integrations that work with Integration Hub, and we release them through the store. They're certified in exactly the same way as our big releases are, and then you can just download them and integrate them obviously into your instance. But the whole point here is we want to make it easy for you to do it and connect these things so you build that customer journey across the board. So Integration Hub, I think we launched back in London, maybe even a version of it in Kingston. But really what we want to get to here is codeless integrations, where they're there for you just to build the logic of almost the business rules or the flow of when this should fire, why it should fire, and the data that should fire it and drive it. Now, keeping going on that theme, you say, well, great, but I'm not on Madrid. I want to get to New York, but upgrades can be a pain. And I would say historically, where customers haven't had all the right guardrails in place, the right governance, the right sort of dev standards, if you will, you can get a little bit bent out of shape. And upgrades can be difficult, they could be lengthy, and they can be costly, right? So a huge amount of effort has gone in from an engineering side, excuse me, in terms of kind of make the platform more bulletproof, but at the same time, how do we be more prescriptive to you around how you actually manage the platform? How do you do your releases? Right? What does good look like in terms of quality of code? So the things we've done around health scan, where we can scan your instance and compare it to best practices and give you scores of whether we think you'll make it, whether you're good, whether you're on track, or you got some dodgy stuff going on that you might want to fix, right? So all this sort of bleeds into that to make you not just say, hey, to fix that problem that you need to upgrade. Absolutely not. We want you to get the value out of the platform. Madrid had 700 net new things in it, right? Including test suites for the ATF framework, which there was about 160 suites or tests included. New York will have 500, and the goal for Orlando was 1,000, right? So we want to add more of that prescriptive testing framework for regression testing, use case testing into the platform, so you can get on and use the thing, not spend your time sort of checking the checkers and looking at tests and doing UAT type stuff. So to support that, we've always had EA, which is early access. We had about 1,200 customers on it for Madrid, and this is where you get a build 4 weeks prior to releasing. And this build is the one that we're running internally. So we're always customer zero. We have a support system called High. It goes on to that release first. So it's the largest instance in the world. You all sit on it in a way, shape, or form, and it's how we support you. So if we're happy with it, we run our business on it. We're pretty confident that you guys can have it as well. But prior to that now, you have a release testing preview, which is about 60 days out, where there might be a particular feature or a function or an application you're particularly interested in testing, and you want it that little bit earlier because you might want to make a different decision. Maybe you want to take the upgrade, you don't. So part of that is a very specific thing. Maybe it's around discovery. Maybe it's around customer service management or human resources. That gives you even earlier access to that code. And again, it's the same production quality. It's supported in exactly the same. It's no different. You might put it on a separate instance from your normal dev cycle, which is fine, but we want to give you that insight so you can start to plan for those upgrades better. There's a very large bank here in the UK, did their Madrid upgrade last weekend. It took them 1 hour and 17 minutes, and they had 130 skipped records, which are records that they're just through the upgrade that they're okay with. They accept the changes and they move on. On average, you're in 1,000 to 2,000 range, depending on age of the customer. So for them, their goal is to go with ServiceNow +7. So if they went to Madrid on March the 6th, their goal would be to go to New York on March 13th if it was released. So 7 days post us releasing, they want to be upgraded in production. How do you do that? Really good governance, really good dev standards, and very strong stakeholder management. All the things that technology doesn't do for you, right? It's about you, people, process, culture. It's the way you work, right? That's what that's all about. So part of this, as we sort of continue on this journey, is to say, well, within that, and ServiceNow is part of this, you know, when we release these new things and how do we get you to adopt these things, it's cool, they look fun, but that's why we want these testing frameworks. But at the same time, there's going to be value for you to go there. Why should I do that upgrade? If it's just to stay in place and say I've ticked the box and I've upgraded, that's not good enough, right? And that's why we start to add in all these new features and functions for you. So this is a big one here around, you know, the ITOM suite with event management and SeamDB. And how do I start to get visibility? You know, that classic view of the world, you might have big plasma screens in your offices or in an operations center where you've got, you know, the health of your services and the red lights popping up and so on. But how do you actually start to see that and learn from that? So what the new console does here with Event is starts to use things tied to machine learning and AI to get a lot more proactive, a lot more prescriptive and say, well, for these things, how do you drill in? How do you drill down? But also get the specific detail under the covers so I can start to make better decisions. In this case, we'll pick on payroll. You know, this is an alert that's happened. The other thing you're starting to see is the look, the feel's changing, right? It's becoming more consumer-like. It's less of that, you know, polar bear in a snowstorm with all the white backgrounds that sort of blur you and blind you at the same time. But get me to meaningful information a lot quicker and a lot easier. And then as I drill in, show me the context, show me the information that's important. Show me the timeline, what happened, when it happened, what else is going on at the same time. Have we seen this before? If so, what did we do about it before, right? Give me that insight, and then when I do drill in, I can start to see things and take action. So you've got a bunch of automation options here. I think it picks the simple one, if I remember, it creates an incident, but you could run an automation job or a script, right? You may have even run it before you got to this point, because maybe you're mature enough where you can do self-healing and self-remediation. Right? So as you start to bring that together, the operator workspace comes alive. And what we're trying to do with workspaces is give a persona-based approach to the information that's important to that person, their role or their function. So workspace came out in a beta version in London. It was general availability in Madrid. You'll see it in incident management typically in the service desk area. This is now coming into the ITOM space in sort of level 2, level 3. In New York and beyond, we'll give you the designer. So the same thing we use to create these things, we're going to let you loose on. So you can create your own, or if you've built a custom app that's specific to you and a process or a solution that you've built, you can change that view as well. You can create your own widgets, your own gadgets, and create a workspace with contextual information to those roles and those functions. So within that, you say, well, how do I get, you know, logging incidents and having more of them per month isn't a bad thing. Actually means people are following the process, or machines are following the process. What's bad is if I'm not learning and they're the same ones I've had previously, right? So how do I start to figure that out? Rather than rely on the human to do that, and we're only all getting busier, what if I could use the machine and things like a similarity framework to match things, find things dynamically and say, well, actually, I think these 24 things are on the right-hand side. It's the spotlight. They're all kind of occurring at the same time. They've all got a look and a feel that's similar to them. Could be based on infrastructure, could be based on the text, could be based on certain department, in this case payroll or finance, could be a certain building where they're having certain issues that might relate to a network problem. So how do you start to see that and do something with them where you group them together and you propose them as a problem or a potential major incident, right? Use the insights to start to figure out, because you've all seen this data, but there's so much of it as a human, we can't process it all and do stuff with it. So what we're trying to do is say, well, if we could take this information, make it contextual, use the agent assist on the right-hand side. So virtual agent, the front end is you having a conversation. Agent assist is like your cobot. It's like your worker, right? It's your helper. You're in the middle of a task or a case or something, and the machine's there sort of guiding you, helping you, saying, hang on, Chris, there's something else going on here you should be aware of. Or based on what I see, these are the other actions you might want to take. Or hey, here's a checklist. Go look at these things, because the last time this happened, these are the things we did, and they actually resolved the issue for you. So it's about supercharging that workspace with the intelligence. In this case, we're proposing a major incident. That might not be the case. It could be a problem, depending on your process and how you go about doing things. So here, the agent workspace is exactly what it says, right? Those nuggets, those widgets, whatever you want to call them, coming together contextually to provide a much more powerful experience rather than just saying, all right, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, let's go to the first ticket in the queue and start churning away. The whole idea is context with the learning of where you've done work previously, what you've done previously, to try to help you resolve that quicker. And then you say, well, what if we could step back and think of, well, this payroll service keeps having this problem. What are we learning? Are we just flogging ourselves every month trying to fix the same issues and we're not getting anywhere? What if from a service delivery standpoint or service portfolio, we could look at this thing a bit more holistically and say, well, what does it mean and are there any alternatives? So if we drill into this one here, we've got a couple of different options that will pop up, hopefully. Come on. So this is the new service portfolio management plugin. So we originally built this in Aspen, right? If you think where we are now, Madrid, right? This thing was built many, many years ago, and it was long overdue an uplift. And now that we have a lot of other things on the platform, like GRC, like financial management, project portfolio, the automation suite, and ITOM, you can get a much more rounded 360 degree of a service other than up-down or SLA and availability. So in this case, you're seeing performance scores, customer satisfaction, number of people using it, and what the spend is as well. So I can make a much smarter decision around what this service is and what potentially I can do with it. And then all the performance metrics. Say, look, you know, availability over time is not great, and also at the same time, that's impacting CSAT, or my net promoter score is another way of thinking about it. I should probably do something about it, because even if I brought this service up and it was 100% available, people probably still don't like it anyway. Right? So why keep flogging that idea? So now if we drill in and actually look at that payroll service, we can start to do things like what-if analysis and say, well, what else have we got? Because often we have 2 or 3 or many more overlapping systems and options. In this case, we've got 2 different service offerings and the metrics and all the sort of supporting information that comes from the CMDB about them. What if we did something with those? And maybe if we move to the high 5 service, it's actually got better availability. It's actually got better CSAT. Maybe it's got better metrics. Might cost you more, but what is the cost, right? When you think about it, cheap isn't always the best, and the most expensive isn't always the best. So, you know, how do you look at that contextually with meaningful information driven out of the CMDB and all those other pieces of work that you do? So the service owner workspace, right? We use this workspace word a lot. It's about not necessarily the people that are running the incident process, the change process, the PPM process or whatever, but giving them a simple way to look at consumption and combining that data across the board so you can make much more smarter decisions around, you know, if you make all this effort to make the CMDB work and you map everything and you have all your relationships to things, wouldn't it be nice if I could see in a simple view what that thing looks like, how it's performing, maybe what it's costing? Is it risky? Do people even like the services I'm providing? Has anyone ever looked at that, right? Rather than just doing the same things over and over again. And then as you move into things like, well, what about the people that do this work, right? The actual employees. We talk a lot about employee experience. And what employee experience really comes down to is talent. So the systems, the platforms, the pieces that you ask us to use, how do you attain that talent? How do you retain that talent, right? And how do you attract that talent is just as important. We find a lot now. I've interviewed probably 30 people in the last month. And some of the questions they've asked are, what are the systems or platforms you use to do these things? And then when you dig in a little bit further, it's because they've often had a bad experience somewhere else, using something else. And you're like, oh, well, you know, that's kind of interesting. Or maybe they've never used Excel because they've never had to, right? Or the generation that we're hiring, you know, if I look at my kids, they look at my PowerPoints quite often and say they're quite boring. My daughter's got unicorns, purples, reds, sparkles, animations, all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. And you're like, they've got a different perception. She's like, why aren't you using photos from Instagram? Why are you even using PowerPoint? Right? Why can't you do this with other things and maybe record a video or whatever it is? The expectations are so different around the talent. And part of that is, how do you onboard these people? Because they're used to using that phone or a smart device, not fill in all these forms and send them back and hopefully have them by Monday. Right? You need that onboarding experience. So the mobile was the first option for this. We've just launched this ourselves internally for all our new recruits and candidates, to be honest, because onboarding actually starts a way back, 60 days even, from when people are starting to get hired. So how do you capture the basic information of getting them sign the right documents, maybe submit their ID for verification? Security badges. Why should I have to go and find a hole in the basement with some weird old crusty guy that's got a digital camera to take a photo and put it on where does he go with that picture after you've put it on your, right? That's my worry. I talk about identity theft. But I'm not, my kids are, they're used to taking selfies and things. Why not? Use that as your security badge. It's more personal to you. You feel a bit empowered to do it. And it's rather than that stale sort of passport photo look. It creates a different experience. And if I can do those things simply and easily, but you guide me on your journey, because I don't know your process, I'm not on board yet. But if you can make it simple and easy for me to do it, intuitive, guess what? I'm more likely to do it. So day one, when you start, you can be productive. I just hired a lady in Brussels, she came from Dimension Data, where she compared them to us, and she said for her to get to the point where she is now after week 2, took 7 months at Dimension Data. Day one, when she joined us, she had a laptop, she had her phone, she had all her logins, and she had already emails from me bugging her about what she was going to do. Right? She was productive day one. That's the experience people want. They want to get on, they want to get work. They shouldn't be tangled in this web of internal process. And all of that is built on the mobile platform. Right? And I'll happily show you afterwards how we've done that for my team. We're putting a lot more there. We have the concept of one approval internally. So in my role, I have about 7 different systems that potentially approvals can sit in. So everything from Concur for expenses, Workday for time off, SAP for invoices and POs and whatnot. That's a pain, right? And I'm always around traveling all over the place. So if I can do it on my phone, it's really easy. So what our IT guys have done is create one seamless experience on the phone called One Approval that integrates behind the scenes. All the complexity is there. That's their problem to solve. But I have one view of my approvals and the things I need to do. Now, the approval doesn't happen in ServiceNow. It looks like it does because of a UX standpoint, but it actually goes off to SAP and does something funky in SAP and does the right work for me. And it's about hiding that complexity, right? So what happens? I approve things a lot faster than I normally would because I don't have to log into SAP. And then finally, if you look at these silos, that journey I talked about of going from IT to HR to the front office to customer service and so on, more and more we start coming up against finance for a couple of different reasons. Interestingly, more and more with customers, we're now becoming in the top 10 and even top 5 of line items of annual cost. So we're on the CFO's radar more and more, right? As people grow and adopt the platform more and more, we start appearing on the radar in terms of, wow, we spend a lot of money with those guys, or do we get the full value from those guys, or where are we with those guys? Let's chat to them. So as we dig in and start to talk to the people in finance, what we realized is there's a whole operations team in finance who you have to close your books, right? Accounting, right? At the end of the month, end of the quarter, end of the year. And if you're a publicly traded company, that's kind of important. You've got a regulatory requirement to do that, do it accurately, prove it's right, but also do it on time, right? And it's all related to SOX and all those other fun things the FCA asks you to do. So this actually came from our own internal financial controller. About 3 months after we went public in 2012, he started to juggle this race of 90 days. We had to get to this point of closing all the books and records and updating SAP and so on. And he's like, hang on, there's got to be a better way of doing this than manual spreadsheets, emails, and throwing people in meeting rooms. How do we make that happen? So that's where the Inspiration Financial Close Automation came from. So it's that dashboard view, again integrated with an Oracle and SAP, whatever your systems are, to actually get the work done around getting you to the end of the month. For us, this has saved us 7 days of people's time actually closing our books and records at the end of a quarter, which is huge. Now, we haven't fired those 7 people. We've actually freed them up to do more meaningful work than chase around and close things and reconcile things and get invoices in and pay things and so on, right? We can actually report our financial position really, really simply and easily. So, they're some of the 37 things we talked about at Knowledge, that we launched at Knowledge. And they're part of Madrid, obviously. Some of them more are part of New York, Orlando, and beyond. For us, that's the journey, right? That's the next 12, 18 months in terms of innovation, where we're going and what we're doing. From here, October, we go into what we call the Now at Work World Tour. Many of you would know it as the Now Forum, London. Again, it's in October. And there, again, it's that next sort of step from our standpoint of where we're going, what we're doing, what's the journey we're taking. By then, we will have New York out in the wild. That's due to come out mid-September. So a lot of what we're releasing in New York, again, which you're entitled to see now in the roadmap, ask us about, and that'll be a lot of what we show, and obviously our partners show as well. So that's, thankfully, my last slide. Thank you for paying attention, staying. Any questions? Or cocktail shakers even, that's Jess. Yes, gentleman at the front. And I'll repeat the question for you as well.
I'm slightly new to this, right? With the Madrid, Paris,
yep.
Following out there, right?
We're hoping to, yeah. Yeah.
So I guess it's probably going to be Roman. But I as a customer, so I work for a company. We're probably going to buy ServiceNow through Highmetric, right? I was looking at your upgrade cycles, and I'm against customizations. I've been through with SharePoint, and everything. Now, as a customer, right, you talk about these upgrade cycles. So if I haven't screwed it up, right, that means I can just naturally move, or is there a percentage of things that might break where I just configure?
Yep. So the question is around upgrade cycles, and can you just move, or is there an element of things that you've configured?
I haven't customized anything whatsoever.
Correct. Yeah, so what happens is when the upgrade runs, and we've got people here that can talk about it to you, you will still do an element of testing, right? Your own due diligence. You have to, right? That's part of what we do in IT. But yes, you're exactly right? So when the upgrade runs, it does a check and tells you all the things that we've touched, you've touched, and vice versa. And you flow, you continue. Like I said, Lloyd's, I've given it away now, did theirs in 1 hour and 20 minutes. I've got one customer that did theirs in 20 minutes with one resource, right? And they have 150,000 users on the platform. So again, it comes down to your discipline, your stakeholder, your dev standards, and we can share all of that with you around what that looks like. A really good example is PayPal, massive customer. They went per release, they used to take 6 months to plan, execute, test, and get into production, and they calculate it was about 2,000 man hours. They've gone the other way using the testing framework, and they can now fully regression test the entire platform in 21 hours. The guy kicks it off the night before, comes in the next day, most of it's done, they do their release to prod. Right? So a lot of the automation's there, but again, the thing with ServiceNow is it's amazing you can make it do anything you want. The really shitty thing with ServiceNow is you can make it do anything you want. If you don't have the right standards and controls in place, you're an admin. I can't control what you do and don't do. In the same way, the data you put in the platform, we don't control. That's your choice. So it's about good discipline, good standards. And I would argue that's not just us. I've got customers that have done that with SAP, right? And they're re-implementing SAP, which is a whole world of pain, compared to us, if you will. And what I would say is in the Customer Success Center, and happily to follow up afterwards, some of that prescriptive guidance is all there for you. And if you follow it, you'll be absolutely fine.
Not that I ever want to be in this position, but I'm just curious, how long do you support the products?
So contractually, we're N-2. N-1, sorry. Whoops, almost. We used to be N-2, right? So you've got to be on N, so you should be on Madrid, essentially, when we release it. We'll support back to London. Anything prior to that, it's a different conversation. And that's not just, we want you on the latest and greatest for the features. There's security things, all the wonderful stuff that goes on under the covers.
You don't have to defend it, I was just curious.
No. Well, we have to defend it because some customers don't want us to, right? And I'm like, well, okay, you go run your service and tell me you're running on a 5-year-old version of whatever, and you're doing my banking for me? Sorry, my money's not safe with you, right? So it kind of goes both ways. It's great for us for support. It's one code base. It's a lot cleaner. It's a lot simpler and easier for us to support you. But also at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that you get entitled to through your contract, through the upgrades, that you could be leveraging that maybe you're not. Okay. Anybody else? Who's brave enough? Go on, I got 2 questions in Germany. We've got to beat that in London. No? You all thirsty? Thirsty Thursday? All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.